Spike Lee is back. What is up, everybody? RandomRandomMan here, bringing you my review for BlacKkKlansman. Based on the autobiography of the same name, written by Ron Stallworth, and set in 1979 Colorado Springs, the plot basically follows the book's author, played by John David Washington, who is an African-American detective seeking out to infiltrate and expose the Ku Klux Klan, who have been gaining more prominence in that area of the United States. Going into this movie, I was very excited to see it. It became one of my most anticipated films of 2018 for one, its director, and two, its concept, as I saw it gain more prominence when it premiered not at the Sundance Film Festival earlier this year, but at the Cannes Film Festival back in May, where it competed for the Palme d'Or and ended up winning the Grand Prix, one of the festival's most prestigious honors, which I felt bolstered my anticipation, and seeing Spike Lee make a movie like this had me hooked because this is a director who is synonymous for making a bunch of provocative films with race relations and just other concepts that are relevant to him and a lot of people in America today. Do the Right Thing dealt with that. Malcolm X also dealt with that. Now, not everyone is a fan of Lee's style of filmmaking. With BlacKkKlansman, this movie, in what is trying to tell within itself being based on a crazy true story, still had me enticed to see it. Starting out with the cast and their performances, we have John David Washington in the role of Ron Stallworth. Now, John David is actually the son of Denzel Washington. Yeah, pretty cool. And when I watched the movie, I did notice some minor inflections that John David gave in his performance that reminded me of his famous dad. How is he as a performer, though? Well, I believe this is the first leading role that he's ever done in a movie, as I don't recognize him from anything else in the past, and I think he is utterly brilliant in the role of Stallworth. This character is very much an outsider in an environment that is antagonizing towards him, as he becomes the first ever black cop on the Colorado Springs police force. Then when he gets into the case of trying to infiltrate and expose the KKK, despite himself being black, he tackles it with some resilience and prove that he is more than just being the first of his kind on the Colorado Springs police force. And for that, I thought he was tremendous in this role. I feel the same applies with some of the other performances, including Adam Driver as the partner to Ron Stallworth. He works with Stallworth to create a persona for themselves to where the actual Ron Stallworth, John David Washington's character, poses as himself on the phone with a white accent, similar to what Sorry to Bother You did earlier this summer as well. And Adam Driver's character poses as Stallworth in person whenever he is with the KKK. He is also Jewish, so that's an aspect of himself that he has to hide, while having an arc to himself that is similar to what Washington's character goes through. The chemistry between Washington and Driver is also great. They work as kind of an off-kilter buddy cop kind of duo, to where they are in this together, and if they screw up at even one site of the KKK's knowledge, they're done for. There's also Laura Harrier, who you may recognize from Spider-Man Homecoming as the president of the Black Union at Colorado College, who John David Washington Stallworth gets acquainted with, and these two have nice moments together in how they have different ideologies, but they both have a connection with each other in how they are both dealing with similar issues. There's even Topher Grace as David Duke, the Grand Wizard of the KKK. I think this is one of the best things I've ever seen Grace do as an actor, aside from that 70s show. His interactions with Washington Stallworth over the phone I found to be quite amusing, and also you just straight up hate Duke as a character for being the racist bigot that he is. The cast extends to other people as well, such as Corey Hawkins as this outspoken black activist who shows up briefly early on in the film with this rousing speech that he has. There's even Harry Belafonte, the legend himself, who has a brief moment in the movie as well that is quite powerful. So I feel with the cast, mainly with John David Washington and Adam Driver, I feel they are superb. The writing in this film sets up a tone that is reminiscent of what Spike Lee has done with movies in his past. He co-wrote this film along with directing, of course, and what the movie shows from its beginning is footage of the iconic Gone with the Wind, followed by a scientific explanation of white racial superiority from a doctor played by Alec Baldwin, of all people. And that in itself immediately sets up the vibe and overall aura of what the movie is doing. We then see Washington Stallworth applied to be a police officer in Colorado Springs, and the tone in that scene has some comedy for sure, but the rest of the movie is serious at some notable moments, but with some humor interlaced in between. That's something I think could have went wrong with this film, in it being unbalanced with the atmosphere that it's trying to create. But rest assured, what Spike Lee does shows off that what he is essentially showing is something that is grounded in reality, but he knows when to keep the vibe lighthearted in some moments, as this movie in a lot of scenes is hysterically funny. I found myself laughing out loud in quite a few moments, and I also felt legitimately concerned for Stallworth and his partner when they are tackling this investigation. I felt the movie immediately got more gripping when the case is tackled, for there being real stakes for the characters played by Washington and Driver, and what helps this all out is the movie becoming more absorbing for its actual look and overall style that it creates. Some moments of the film felt very reminiscent of blaxploitation films from the decade it is set in, while also feeling very 1970s with the production design, the costumes, the music used, and just how it is presented in it being really authentic to the time period. Also, just look at the way this movie's title is spelled and formatted. That's some style right there. The cinematography contributes to this sentiment as well, looking like it was shot on grainy film from the era, and the overall inspired direction from Spike Lee shows off how he has come a long way from how he started out in his earlier films, becoming such a skilled director in pacing out scenes right, and the blocking and overall interactions that the characters do have make the film only more investing in my eyes. Speaking of the investment I have with this film, this movie runs at about 2 hours and 15 minutes, but I never felt it drag or miss a beat at all, for the pacing being well spaced out in between some crucial moments and some more downtime that have been edited together to feel like it just flowed like a movie building up, and then when shit hits the fan, it really hits the fan. I found this movie to be such an utterly entertaining experience throughout, and a treat to see this crazy true story be told. But what stopped it from being an ideally perfect film in my eyes had to do with some of the performances. Some members of the KKK here were played by actors such as Jasper Pakonen, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, I apologize if I butchered it, Paul Walter Hauser, who I remember as Tanya Harding's bodyguard in I, Tanya, and then there's also Ashley Atkinson, who plays the wife of Pakonen's character. These performances I felt bordered on the line of too comedic for their own good. I get the intention from Spike Lee and how they are supposed to be played up as ridiculously as possible for them being KKK members and us supposed to hate them for their asshole ideologies. Yet, at times, they felt too much like cartoon characters and straight up caricatures to where they were just nothing but cannon fodder for us to really just hate them some more. That minor issue I had with this movie, I don't think is going to be as big of a problem for some as the ending of this movie will be to others. As the way this movie ends, I'm not talking about the ending of the story, which I found to be so satisfying. No, I'm talking about the epilogue of this movie, to where footage of what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia a year ago, this weekend actually, is played as the movie is about to end, where white supremacists are seen marching, the fatal car attack that ended with the death of one woman. There are certainly going to be people who take issue with this approach to ending the film and how it may be pretentious to them, preaching to the choir. I personally felt this segment being used at the end of this movie was effective, as it hit home the point that I think Spike Lee was trying to make in how History is having a tendency to repeat itself right now towards the end of the 2010s with hate, white supremacy, racism, and overall bigotry being used back then in the late 1970s in which this movie took place, and it just seemingly never ending in hindsight. With that too, I think it's going to be quite an emotional experience for some who do watch this movie, like with the audience members I was with, as they were into this movie throughout, but one woman, as the final seconds of the movie were playing, yelled out, "Number 45 has no conscience." I think you can imply what she meant by that. So I can see how those will have a strong response to this film. And I certainly did as well, as I think this is a supreme example of political satire, something along the lines of even Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, with Stanley Kubrick's themes that he presented in that film from the 1960s, still relevant to today as I last watched this movie a few days ago. BlacKkKlansman and what Spike Lee did as well will get people talking and thinking long after they have finished watching it. In my opinion, this is Spike Lee's best film in 2 decades. This is easily one of my favorite movies of 2018 thus far. I highly recommend it. My final verdict for BlacKkKlansman is 4.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of BlacKkKlansman, social media links in the description, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.